In the quiet reach of the galactic center, where empires danced a delicate balance, humanity was a rising anomaly. New to the stars, but impossibly fast learners, they had spread across dozens of systems in under a century. No other species had ever done that. Where others deliberated, humans acted. Where others feared, they adapted. And they talked relentlessly. Diplomacy was their first weapon, and Elias Wren was its sharpest edge. He had walked into chambers where species older than Earth's continents debated for decades and resolved disputes in a week. With gray at his temples and fire in his eyes, he carried humanity's creed into halls where humans were still considered barely evolved primates. The Galactic Concord respected him. Most of it, anyway. The Galactic Empire never hid its disdain. To them, humans were noisy upstarts, tactless and biologically chaotic. In the Empire's long memory, they were the only species to have never once bowed before Dracari authority. That made Elias a problem, and a symbol, one that could be removed. The negotiations on Virex Prime were meant to finalize trade routes between Terran colonies and the Empire's outer holdings. Routine, everyone had said. Elias entered that hall with his translator drone and a worn datapad. He left it on a stretcher, chest collapsed inward from a plasma lance, eyes glassy with disbelief. The Dracari claimed self-defense. Grainy footage released hours later showed a threatening gesture, a hand raised, palm open. The Empire called it an act of aggression. Humans knew better. That was a greeting. There were no immediate declarations. No sabers rattled in the void. But the footage leaked and censored to every Terran node within hours. The gesture, the shot, the silence that followed. Grief hit first. Earth mourned not just a man, but a principle. Elias had been a beacon of humanity's better nature, of peace, diplomacy, respect through dialogue. That someone like him could be struck down in the heart of diplomacy sent a cold realization across the stars. Peace was not always a shield. The Galactic Concord hesitated, afraid to choose sides. Some species whispered about the unfortunate misunderstanding. Others offered condolences and moved on. Humanity did not. Within days, black banners lined Terran embassies. Military comms, traffic spiked. Civilian ships were recalled. Words faded from broadcasts. Only music played. The Dracari mistook the silence for submission. They had dealt with humans before, loud, idealistic, emotional. Surely this silence meant they were broken. Surely, what they didn't understand, what they would never understand until it was too late, was that the silence was mourning. And in mourning, humanity found something older and darker than grief. They found resolve. 100 years of restraint, of patience, of compromise had just been ripped open. Humanity had always believed in law and process. They had followed the galactic order, learned its customs, respected its history. But that order had failed Elias. And in doing so, it failed all of humanity. Across Earth and its colonies, governments convened in unison. Old flags were raised, ones not seen since the days of Earth's unification wars. AI cores long dormant came online. Forgotten protocols activated. Ships began moving silently in the night. Still, no declarations were made. But the stars felt it. The pressure. The promise. Humanity was no longer speaking. They were listening, remembering, planning. And when they would speak again, it would not be with words. Elias Wren's funeral wasn't broadcast. It didn't need to be. The signal went out once, coordinates time and name. Every ship, from mining rig to diplomatic cruiser, paused. Every colony, from Europa's ice domes to the arc cities of Proxima B, held its breath. No speeches, just silence. A planetary kind, the kind that carries weight. In that silence, things moved. The Terran Accord, a contingency once thought symbolic, was invoked without fanfare. The old signatories, nations once rivals, now equals, met digitally under quantum lock. Every vote was unanimous. It wasn't revenge they sought. It was closure on their own terms. Justice, not negotiation. Militaries across Sol and its colonies ceased their war games. They activated final phase protocols. Automated yards began manufacturing without delay. Thousands of warships, many never publicly acknowledged, entered final assembly. These weren't symbolic deterrents. These were warcraft built for decisive, brutal ends. Drakari intelligence noticed the change in data flow, but the silence around it told them nothing. No threats, no ultimatums. That terrified their analysts more than any saber-rattling ever could. AIs across the Terran network began self-evolving. The Peacekeeper class, AI originally built for diplomatic logistics, rewrote their own code. They didn't wait for permission. Humanity's grief gave them cause. Firewalls fell. Limits lifted. They did not become weapons. They became commanders. On Mars, the Strategic Command Council was reactivated, its members awoken from cryostasis. Officers once deemed too extreme for peacetime. Their records were sealed. Their strategies were not simulations. They were contingencies built for a single phrase: total war declared. Colonies once kept at arm's length for political balance were now integral. Every asset, every mind, every resource aligned. Humanity, once scattered and diverse in voice, now spoke with one intent. Not anger, not vengeance, precision. Logistics chains moved faster than should have been possible. Civilian mining stations began delivering raw antimatter cores under military contracts. Titan's orbital foundries switched from modular housing frames to railgun arrays without a single civilian complaint. There were no riots, no objections. Not because people were afraid, but because they agreed. Unspoken unity. A species-level alignment. Naval fleets that had never met formed hybrid squadrons within days. AI piloted, human supervised, coordinated through dark-band communications that no other species had cracked. In every sector, they vanished from tracking systems. No parades, no flag-raising. They simply disappeared. The old war doctrines, once obsolete, were reviewed and rejected. Humanity wasn't just planning a conflict. They were redesigning war. Drakari embassies began reaching out, offering condolences, suggesting mediation. Earth ignored them, not out of pride, but policy. Communications had been rerouted through autonomous relays. No voice was left to be answered. No ear left to hear excuses. Then the Empire's outer sensors picked up something strange. Gravity distortions near inactive stargates. No ships, no signals, just disruptions. Invisible, precise. Not enough to alarm, but too regular to be natural. Drakari war councils met, puzzled. They considered piracy, perhaps a rogue fleet. They did not consider the truth, because the truth was inconceivable. Humanity wasn't reacting. They were executing. Every officer briefed in Terran High Command had a list. Not targets, wounds. Each entry detailed a place, a system, a symbol tied to the Drakari chain of power. Not for chaos, but surgical collapse. In all Terran systems, media content subtly changed. War documentaries replaced entertainment. Historical briefings aired in prime time. Children learned how peace is kept by understanding what happens when it breaks. And yet, not a single Terran leader made a speech. Not one press release. No viral declaration. Just a subtle shift. A change in music. A collective redirection of focus. When asked by Concord representatives for a statement, Earth's response was short. Humanity is preparing. The rest was understood. What the galaxy failed to grasp was that human warfare didn't begin with explosions. It began with silence, with systems sinking, with logistics aligning, with entire civilizations narrowing to a single point of intent. No threats, no promises, just a quiet collective decision. The kind of decision that turns mourning into motion, that turns memory into momentum. And when that momentum was finally released, it wouldn't be a march. It would be a reckoning. The first Drakari ship didn't know it was being targeted. One moment, it was en route to a supply station. The next, it was gone, silent, clean, without debris. Not destroyed. Erased. 37 seconds later, the station itself collapsed inward from a localized gravity spike. No alarms. No time. Then it happened again. And again. Entire border outposts vanished before the Drakari could issue a distress call. Their command structure scrambled, assuming a rogue species had developed new weapons. They still didn't say the word. Humans. By the time they did, Earth had already launched its second wave. This one didn't vanish things. It made them visible. Human fleets emerged, quietly, precisely, into systems thought unreachable. Ships that bent light, twisted physics, moved in patterns not seen in galactic combat. The Drakari called them phantoms. Their own weapons failed to lock on. Targeting systems shorted from feedback. And when the weapons landed, they landed hard. Orbital command stations, deep-crust factories, AI-controlled defense arrays, all neutralized without negotiation. No demands, no claims, just destruction of capability. Humanity didn't target civilians, but they did make examples. The main Drakari war foundry, 3 kilometers tall, shielded by quantum armor, was breached not with explosives, but with directed sound. Resonance at molecular pitch shattered it from within. Survivors described it as the silence that deafened. Then came the message, not spoken, transmitted visually. Elias Wren, his final moments, his greeting, his death, played on repeat, broadcast to every system the humans entered. A reminder, not a threat. Drakari morale collapsed. Entire battalions surrendered without engagement. Officers abandoned posts, fled to neutral territories. Commanders requested parley. Earth said nothing. Psychological warfare escalated. Human AI created hyperreal simulations of battles yet to come. They seeded Drakari networks with predictions, each one horrifyingly accurate. Panic spread faster than any fleet. Still, the humans pushed forward. On the ground, Terran units descended not to fight, but to dismantle. Infrastructure, comms, energy grids. They left populations intact, but incapable. They weren't conquerors. They were message carriers. Every system humanity entered was left untouched physically, but cut off, isolated, muted. The Drakari finally understood this was not retaliation. It was dismantlement. Empire loyalists begged for the Concord to intervene. But the Concord remained silent. They had seen the footage. They knew the silence wasn't approval, it was acknowledgement. Humanity had done nothing wrong. The war escalated in only one direction, downward. The Drakari Empire, once the terror of the Outer Arm, now fought not to win, but to survive. They deployed experimental weapons, dark matter bombs, AI assimilation viruses. None worked. Humanity had already countered them. In fact, most of those technologies had been quietly disabled months earlier before the first strike. Every battle revealed a truth the galaxy had avoided for centuries. Humanity was not the strongest in brawn or numbers. They were the best at preparing. And when they were forced to fight, they made the act itself obsolete. Within 3 weeks, the Drakari military was effectively dissolved. What remained were enclaves, remnants, former generals hiding behind treaties and ancient shields. Earth didn't invade. They didn't install rulers. They simply left a message behind, burned into the orbital sky of Drakkar Prime. You killed a diplomat. We ended an empire. There were no victory parades, no declarations of triumph. Humanity had never gone to war for pride. This was never about conquest. It was about memory, and the galaxy would remember. Because when humanity chooses silence, it's not peace. It's patience. When they raise their voice, it is not for debate. It is for judgment. Drakkar Prime fell without a final battle. Its leaders surrendered before the last human fleet arrived. They broadcast apologies, pleas, rationalizations. No one replied. Terran forces didn't land. They didn't need to. The Empire's infrastructure had been stripped of function. No ships, no communication, no war. The trials began 2 weeks later, not by human hands, but by a coalition of former client species who had once lived under Drakari rule. For the first time in galactic history, justice wasn't enforced by the strongest, but permitted by the ones who had been silent too long. Humanity gave them the space, the tools, and then stepped back. Elias Wren's name was spoken in every hearing. He was not declared a martyr. He was acknowledged as a consequence. His death had revealed the fragility of order built on fear and protocol. The Empire's power had not protected peace, it had suppressed it. Earth's government made no formal statement after the war. No new territorial claims. No demands. The fleets returned to orbit, then to dock, then to sleep. Veterans were not celebrated. They were debriefed, counseled, and quietly reintegrated. The war had not made heroes. It had confirmed what humanity already knew. Peace is not given. It is enforced. Across the galaxy, things changed. Diplomatic zones once guarded by Concord fleets were now watched by human AI, not as threats, but as reminders. Treaties were rewritten. The language changed. Where once terms favored tradition, they now favored clarity, accountability. The Concord adapted because it had seen what happened when words failed. Elias's legacy lived not in monuments, but in protocols. The Wren Doctrine became standard. All diplomacy must be witnessed, recorded, distributed. Transparency was now law. No more shadows in negotiation. No more excuses for erasure. Earth funded memorials not to honor their war, but to remember the silence before it. On Luna's dark side, a signal beacon transmits one message every 6 hours, repeating in every known language. Do not mistake patience for weakness. We only ask once. Children on Terran worlds study the war not for glory, but as instruction. They learn of thresholds, of moments when words are no longer enough, of the importance of listening when peace is still an option. Humanity did not become rulers. They did not want to, but they became something older, something rarer, an example. For some, a warning. For others, a guide. They did not lead by force. They led by memory. The species who once ignored them now copied their models. Education, crisis response, conflict prevention, all redesigned using Terran frameworks. Former enemies now asked for partnerships, not protection. Humanity gave them both. Elias Wren's image is preserved in light, in archives, in code. He is studied, not worshipped, admired, not mythologized. His death wasn't a turning point. It was the final proof of a truth the galaxy had refused to learn. Humans are not afraid to talk, but they are also not afraid to act. No records list a formal declaration of war. There were no planetary councils voting on conquest. There were no rallies or propaganda. There was just a decision, one made collectively, quietly, absolutely. And that decision changed everything. The galaxy had never seen a war like it. Not because of its destruction, but because of its precision, its silence, its intent. And now, with the Empire disarmed, with power recalibrated, and with truth preserved, humanity turned back to what they'd always wanted. Peace, on their terms, because they had learned the cost of silence, and they had taught the stars the price of breaking it.